Hello everyone, Fred here. In this installment of TPP Dynamite, I'm going to be explaining one major DCEU mistake that the DCU already looks to be repeating, even though we technically haven't gotten even one DCU project yet, and why that makes me concerned for the fate of the DCU itself. First things first though, if you haven't already, let me encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I'm currently at just over 400 subscribers and am really trying to make it to 500 by the end of this year. I post film, book, and TV series reviews. I do opinion pieces on entertainment, news, and affairs. I'm also an author of adult and young adult mystery novels. I recently released a new short mystery called The Intruder. There's a link to it in my video description below, and I encourage you to check it out as well. With that in mind, and without further ado, I'm going to just jump right into it. So almost everyone can agree that the DCEU was a failure critically, financially, with audiences, and much of the blame for that failure can be attributed to the hit or miss quality of most DCEU movies, as well as the lack of singular vision for the shared universe that became increasingly clear as different directors and writers and studio executives came and went and attempted executing their own plans with the brand. The DCEU's main problem, though, the one that truly sank the ship, was its rushed and nakedly cash-grabbing structure. The DCEU was actually off to a very good start with 2013's Man of Steel. Now, that movie did have its problems, most of them stemming from the fact that Zack Snyder did a perfect job of portraying Henry Cavill's powers but not his personality as Superman, evidenced in moments like Superman's letting his adoptive father die, fighting General Zod all out in a city where he had to have known that innocent people would be caught in the crossfire, and ultimately actually killing General Zod by breaking his neck. Nevertheless, Man of Steel was still quite a solid Superman film, especially considering that it was a Superman origin film. It faced plenty of backlash even from me, mainly because Superman didn't start off as the iconic character that most people know from the comics. And again, it was a big mistake that Zack Snyder was intent on basically developing Superman into his iconic persona over several movies versus just starting him out there as has been done in basically every other successful Superman story since the dawn of time. Worse, Zack Snyder particularly seemed intent on tossing Superman into unwinnable situations that called for killing as the only way out. Stories that are thought-provoking and that make sense naturally, but that probably should not have been told with Superman until much, much later in his career. But if Zack Snyder and David S. Goyer had gotten to do their Superman trilogy as planned, many of those problems that I and others had with Man of Steel would probably have been satisfyingly explained away or otherwise handled via character development. After all, Clark Kent was only really Superman for maybe 3 days in Man of Steel, and had spent most of his life before then being trained by his own adopted father to believe that he needed to hide his powers to protect himself from human racism and xenophobia, even if it caused other people to get killed. His adopted father basically asked him to let him die. The fight with Zod in a populated area was basically unavoidable in that Zod was dead set on killing Superman there. It was all Superman could do just to contain him, and there was clearly no way that Superman was going to be able to move him to an unpopulated desert or whatever before going at him again. And as for Superman's killing Zod to stop him from killing the family of 4 at the end of Man of Steel, that was very clear self-defense in a situation with no other solid alternatives. Zod had already said that he planned to murder every human on Earth just to spite Superman. There was no kryptonite at that point in time, and there was no way to control Zod. Even if Superman had stopped Zod from killing the family by non-lethal means, Zod still would have killed someone else quickly. It was just a matter of time. My point is that if Zack Snyder and David S. Goyer had just been allowed to do a few more Superman movies, they could have eliminated all those problems that people had with Superman in the first movie and made him into the iconic Superman of the comics. It wouldn't have been perfect, but it would have been good. In fact, David S. Goyer has already gone on record by saying that there were scenes that just didn't get released in Man of Steel itself, wherein Clark Kent learned as a teenager a lesson about when killing is justified. Imagine if two Man of Steel sequels had been released and if they'd rehabilitated Superman's more controversial Man of Steel image by including scenes like that, or scenes where he's devastated over the loss of life from the Zod fight and purposes to make a point of leading any future God-level fights away to uninhabited areas, or scenes where Superman decides that his adoptive father was wrong and that he has a moral obligation to save others even if it earns him nothing but hatred, and even if the people he's saving don't understand the value of their own lives at the time that he's saving them. Or scenes where Superman is devastated over killing Zod even though it was justified, and makes a point of working tirelessly to master his powers so that he's never again placed in a situation where killing becomes the only option, like the masterful way in which Invincible's Season 2 finale executed that exact sort of development with Mark Grayson. Unfortunately, Man of Steel, released just after Joss Whedon's first Avengers movie, was setting the world on fire critically and financially, and Warner Brothers, smelling team-up movie money, decided to rush out its own Justice League film. That, of course, led to a disgraceful and ill-advised follow-up film to Man of Steel in the form of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. It led eventually to the even more ill-conceived Joss Whedon cut of Justice League. And the rest, as they say, is history. Warner Brothers wanted to replicate the success of 2012's Avengers, but wanted to do it without putting in even half the work, and without abiding by the lesson that Disney had employed that led to the success of Avengers in the first place. And this is that main DCEU problem that I mentioned at the top of this video and in the title. Disney slowly built up a cinematic universe off the backs of Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, and Captain America, each of whom received one or two solo origin movies before Avengers. Those movies, while admittedly ranging in quality from great to lackluster, still served as strong introductory character studies for those individual heroes and got audiences to care about them, and to a lesser degree Hawkeye and Black Widow as well, before they all teamed up in Avengers. Warner Brothers, in its own rush to get Avengers box office results, effectively mandated the death of the origin story and the introductory character study movie moving forward. So Ben Affleck's Batman and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman were tossed into Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice like an afterthought so that Justice League could hurry up and happen. Then the Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman were tossed into Justice League like an afterthought so that Justice League could hurry up and happen. Wonder Woman got a sort of origin story in a movie that was released only after Justice League had tanked. Aquaman got a sort of origin story in a movie released a considerable while after that. Then The Flash got, in literally the loosest interpretation of the phrase, a sort of origin story in a movie released just when the DCEU was about to die. And that was the DCEU's main problem. This drive to build a cinematic universe on literal air, to run before walking. This viewpoint that introductory origin stories are somehow four-letter words or liabilities because they're not guaranteed to make $1 billion, and because they give the audience some information that may already be known about comic book characters. No. Those movies provide the audience with valuable information about why those characters do what they do and what sort of code they'll have moving forward. Like how Iron Man or Captain America, the first Avenger, or to an admittedly lesser degree Thor, made us love those characters by seeing their journeys to become who they are and why. Those movies are how you get audiences to care about individual characters and to eventually come out to see how those individual characters and their various codes and quirks and flaws will interact in team-up movies. More, those movies are how you build individual characters slowly until the point at which they are billion-dollar franchises on their own. See, Disney understood that. Disney understood that building a cinematic universe is a game of patience. They didn't kiss off introductory origin stories for Iron Man or Captain America or Thor or even sillier characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy or Ant-Man. They patiently introduced those characters to the audience in movies that did not earn billions of dollars, but that did earn audience and critical respect. And because they did, those properties became billion-dollar franchises over time. And that's why Ant-Man and even Rocket Raccoon are more profitable than literally Superman or Wonder Woman or Batman right now. There is just no way that we should have gotten BVS before we got Man of Steel 2 and origin story movies that served as introductory character studies for Batman and Wonder Woman. Then, After BVS, we should have gotten origin story movies that served as introductory character studies for The Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman before Justice League. Those three characters particularly would have benefited from the treatment of their own setup films. It would have helped distinguish Ezra Miller's Flash from Grant Gustin's and helped Ezra's Flash build a much-needed fan base. It would have helped rehabilitate Aquaman in the eyes of fans who still saw him as a joke, and it probably would have helped Cyborg most of all, given that he's the least popular out of all those characters and is based on an already C-list comics character. Really, I highly doubt that he should have even been in the Justice League at all versus the Teen Titans, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, the fact that taking that rushed approach heralded the DCEU's failure leads me into my second point of the day, which is that I'm gravely concerned that the DCU is gearing up to fail just as hard, because the DCU already seems to have latched on to that very flawed DCEU logic that origin stories and introductory character studies for single superheroes must be avoided at all costs. James Gunn, the DCU's creative head, has already gone on record by saying that when his DCU starts, the audience is just going to be dropped into a world where superheroes already publicly exist and have for decades, if not longer. The first major DCU film project will be a Superman but not Superman movie that'll depict Superman in the middle of his career, and that'll introduce and set up about 1 billion other characters and aspects of the DCU, including a Guy Gardner Green Lantern who's almost 50. We'll be getting a Green Lantern streaming series with a version of Hal Jordan who's pushing 60 and who'll probably be dying or retiring to set up Jon Stewart's Green Lantern. We'll eventually be getting a Batman who's even further along in his career at almost 50 years old himself. The DCU will be skipping over Dick Grayson and Jason Todd and Tim Drake's Robins, as well as Barbara Gordon's Batgirl, to introduce a Damian Wayne Robin. So all those other Batman family members will have come and gone, and Batman will have had his feud with Ra's al Ghul, gotten together with Talia, and had a son with her, all off screen. Just go! When I look at this, when I see Warner Brothers Discovery pull moves like this, despite the many fans like me who shout well-reasoned warnings about doing it until we're blue in the face, it's like watching in slow motion as a driver gives you the finger for warning him about a cliff up ahead, then speeds at 100 miles per hour through the roadblocks. And it makes me think these people will never learn. These people will never learn. And yeah, on the one hand, I think this may have far more to do with James Gunn and his own narcissism and weird tastes than any specific pressure by Warner Brothers Discovery to rush a shared universe. After all, everyone knows or should know by now that James Gunn is an indie auteur filmmaker at heart, that he has very strange tastes in superhero stuff, that he enjoys doing stories that take inspiration from very deep-cut comic book content, and that he's using his position as one of the new heads of DC Studios to indulge those tastes while dragging the rest of us along for the ride. Everyone also knows or should know that he's using his position to save his own silly Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and Waller stuff at the expense of properly building the DCU to be what it should be, or even definitively ending the DCEU at all. On the other hand, though, Warner Brothers Discovery still hired him and is still letting him do it, which again just reinforces my sneaking suspicion that these people will never learn. But oh well, here's hoping that I'm wrong about the shape that the new DCU is taking. As a major DC Entertainment fan of about 23 years now, I really hope I'm wrong, because I really do think that if I'm right, the DCU is about to tank in a major way, which will probably mean the death of the brand for at least another 10 years. Or at least the death of all non-Batman parts of the brand, and a dramatic realignment by the studio to deliver exclusively Batman content for the next 10 years, which would be equally problematic for reasons that I actually cover in this video here. At any rate, that's just my opinion, well researched and sound though it is. Let me know yours. Sound off in the comments below and tell me what you think. Meanwhile, if you like this video and made it this far, don't forget to leave a like, click subscribe, ring that bell, and hey, follow me on social media as well. So long.